Agitorium nostrum in nomine Domini. Let's pick up with Casti Connubii. So the Pope has been condemning artificial birth control and natural birth control when it's used to stop or prevent children. And why is this wrong? Because it goes against the purpose of the marital union, which the first purpose of marriage is what?
The procreation and education of children.
Second end of marriage is?
The mutual support of the spouses.
Yes. So we left off yesterday where he was saying precisely that. When the couple is no longer able to have children, they still can unite and fulfill the marriage debt because it fulfills which end of marriage?
The second end of marriage.
Second end of marriage, yes. 60. We are deeply touched. Page 17 on the top. We are deeply touched by the sufferings of those parents who in extreme want or need experience great difficulty in rearing their children. So is raising children easy?
No.
Is it hard work?
Yes.
Is it a lot of tears? Yes. A lot of sweat? A lot of patience? But let's be honest, a lot of joys too.
Yes.
Many, many joys raising children. And laughter and fun and all that stuff. But it's hard work. And St. Paul says the childbearing mother, what's the exact words, anyone? What's the exact words about childbearing and the kingdom?
The mother.
Mothers will be saved through childbearing. That's it. So what saved? Because it is precisely constant self-sacrifice, hard work. One mother told me her child just screamed all night long for 2 years, never slept. Whatever it was, earaches, teething, I don't know. She didn't know. She took her to the doctor, they didn't know what it was. But that mother, for 2 years, was every night holding her little baby son when he was like, 1 or 2 or 3 years old. So most don't have that big of a problem. And parents also have to be open to taking children that are crippled, that are retarded, that are physically handicapped. And they question maybe God, why this child or these children? But you know what? In their older age, they realize what a happiness and blessing it actually was to have a child like that. Because all the children are grown up and out of the house, but the one that always stays with them is the crippled or handicapped one. And those are gifts of God. And if they're baptized, they go straight to heaven. If they're partially retarded, or what do you call that, autistic, which is definitely induced, I forget the percentage, 70 or 80% of autistic cases is from the Fauci ouchies. Absolutely. It's criminal. So the parents have to be open to this. And if you're priests and you're preparing marriage couples, you have to remind them, if God sends you crippled children, handicapped children, you must love them and take care of them. And what's really tough is if the child is a vegetable, and he can't feed himself. I know one mother whose son drowned in a pool, and it damaged him. He couldn't feed himself anymore. He couldn't reason anymore. They saved him just in time from dying, but he did lose a lot of his brain use and function. So that good mother and father, they took care of that boy until he was, I think, 30-something years old, then he died. 61, Andres, did you find one?
Yes. However, they should take care lest the
Calamitous state
of their external affairs should be the occasion for a much more calamitous error. No difficulty can arise that justifies the putting aside of the law of God which forbids all acts intrinsically evil.
Stop. So what's he saying here?
That
No matter how terrible the poverty, the sickness, whatever, we cannot transgress.
the law of God.
That's right. No excuse to break God's commandments. Right. And what's intrinsically evil is he talking about?
The sins against nature.
Yeah, sins against nature and blocking
Children.
the openness of children by artificial means or even natural means. Go on.
There is no possible circumstance in which the husband and wife cannot, strengthened by the grace of God, fulfill faithfully their duties and preserve in wedlock their chastity unspotted. This truth of Christian faith is expressed by the teaching of the Council of Trent. Let no one be so rash as to assert that which the fathers of the Council have placed under anathema, namely, that there are precepts of God impossible for the just to observe. God does not ask the impossible, but by his commands instructs you to do what you are able, to pray for what you are not able, that he may help you.
So the Council of Trent was condemning, I think it was the Jansenists who were saying, God puts on us impossible commandments. It's impossible, especially chastity. It's impossible to live chaste. It's impossible to live pure. God put on us impossible commandments. That's what they said, and the church condemned that. So, as our Lord told Saint Bridget, the clothing, as it were, of the new law. The old law was rigid and awkward and a pain in the neck. Oftentimes, especially the precepts of the Pharisees. But the new law was a set of new clothing that's not too tight and it's not too loose. It fits just perfect. And those are the laws and commandments of the new law are not too tight and not too loose. They're perfectly fit for all of us in order to run to heaven. 62, Gavril.
This same doctrine was again solemnly repeated and confirmed by the Church in the condemnation of the Jansenist heresy, which dared to utter this blasphemy against the goodness of God.
Which said, the Jansenists said, go on.
Quote, some precepts of God are, when one considers the powers which man possesses, impossible of fulfillment, even to the just who wish to keep the law and strive to do so. Grace is lacking whereby these laws could be fulfilled.
Yeah, so they said God doesn't supply the grace to keep, especially chastity. But God made chastity a tough trophy. It's not easy. But if one prays and one avoids occasion of sin and one keeps striving, God will give that grace. 63, Guadalupe.
But another very grave crime is to be noted, venerable brethren, which regards the taking of the life of the offspring hidden in the mother's womb. Some wish it to be allowed and left to the will of the father or the mother. Others say it is unlawful unless there are weighty reasons which they call by the name of medical, social, or eugenic indication. Because this matter falls under the penal laws of the state, by which the destruction of the offspring begotten but unborn is forbidden, these people demand that the indication, which in one form or another they defend, be recognized as such by the public law, and in no way penalized. There are those, moreover, who ask that the public authorities provide aid for these death-dealing operations, a thing which, sad to say, everyone knows is of very frequent occurrence in some places.
Okay, what year was this written?
1930.
And he's saying what's going on already?
Abortion.
Abortions. Medical, surgical abortions. So, there you go. He's condemning abortion here as direct murder. 64, Anthony.
As to the medical and therapeutic indication, to which, using their own words, we have made reference, venerable brethren, however much we may pity the mother whose health and even life is gravely imperiled in the performance of the duty allotted to her by nature, nevertheless, what could ever be a sufficient reason for excusing in any way the direct murder of the innocent. This is precisely what we are dealing with here. Whether inflicted upon the mother or upon the child, it is against the precept of God and the law of nature. Thou shalt not kill. The life of each is equally sacred, and no one has the power, not even the public authority, to destroy it. It is of no use to appeal to the right of taking away life, for here it is a question of the innocent. Whereas that right has regard only to the guilty, nor is there here question of defense by bloodshed against an unjust aggressor, for who would call an innocent child an unjust aggressor? Again, there is not question here of what is called the law of extreme necessity, which could even extend to the direct killing of the innocent. Upright and skillful doctors strive most praiseworthily to guard and preserve the lives of both mother and child. On the contrary, those show themselves most unworthy of the noble medical profession who encompass the death of one or the other, through a pretense at practicing medicine or through motives of misguided pity.
Correct. So this is good sound doctrine, gentlemen. Abortion is murder, and if it's down to, which can happen in a delivery, the mother or the child will die, or both. Or both. The doctors cannot kill either one. They can't kill the mother to save the baby. They can't kill the baby to save the mother. So what do? They have to pray. And I've heard of many, many miracles through many mothers who prayed and for their baby to survive, so they could bring the baby to term, so the mother would survive. And I've heard all across the country of many miracles through prayer. And even the doctors and nurses just said that this is a miracle baby, or it's a miracle the mother survived. I've heard of many, many cases. So prayer, really kicks in, especially in these.
Is the concept of an indirect abortion a post-conciliar thing?
No, that is traditional teaching.
Okay.
Indirect abortion means, you have to be kind of grounded in good moral theology to understand this correctly, okay? So the mother is with child, right? And she has a fallopian tube or whatever's going on inside her is cancerous. The church teaches the doctors can remove the cancerous part, uterus or fallopian tube or even the whole thing if they have to, if it's cancerous and gangrene. The church teaches, and this is the principle behind it, is the principle of double effect. You cannot do an intrinsically evil act directly, but the intention is not to kill the baby. The intention is to remove the cancerous part of her body. And if, as a consequence, the baby is attached to the tube or the womb and is removed with it, that is not considered sinful in itself, because the intention was not to kill the baby. The intention is to remove the infected or gangrenous or cancerous part of the mother. It could affect the baby, it could not affect the baby, but if it does, it's not considered an abortion. And it can be tolerated. And that's what's difficult. These are, hair-splitting stuff, and people can easily, it's committed abortion, still it's the baby. But no, it's not the intention. And this is the principle of double effect, which you'll study in detail in moral theology.
Would that be a circumstance where then you could have the baby baptized in the womb?
Yes.
Okay.
So my mother was a nurse. I have 3 or 4 or 5 sisters that were nurses. And the nurses used to be trained, in cases especially like that, to take a syringe and put water into the mother and say the words of baptism, hoping that the water will reach the baby, say the words. And that goes also for a stillbirth. They used to do that If they didn't know if the baby was still alive, they would do that. The nurses used to be trained in this way in the Catholic hospitals. And a lot of nurses used to be nuns. So does that answer your question? So it is traditional teaching from St. Alphonsus himself, the doctor of moral theology. So, okay, where do we leave off?
65.
Yes, 65.
Okay, so a misguided pity. 65, who's up? Michael?
All of which agrees with the stern words of the Bishop of Hippo in denouncing...
Who's that? Who's the Bishop of Hippo?
St. Augustine.
Go on.
In denouncing those wicked parents who seek to remain childless and failing in this are not ashamed to put their offspring to death. Quote, sometimes this lustful cruelty or cruel lust goes so far as to seek to procure a baneful sterility, and if this fails, the fetus conceived in the womb is in one way or another smothered or evacuated in the desire to destroy the offspring before it has life, or if it already lives in the womb, to kill it before it is born. In both man and woman, if both man and woman are party to such practices, they are not spouses at all. And if from the first they have carried on thus, they have come together not for honest wedlock, but for impure gratification. If both are not party to these deeds, I make bold to say that either the one makes herself a mistress of the husband, or the other simply paramour of his wife.
Yes, that's St. Augustine. So he's talking about couples who kill their baby to do away with the inconvenience. Horrible crime. And fetus, in Latin, it's spelled this way, fetus. Fetus is what?
A baby.
A baby. So you get a lot of these pro-abortionists say, it's not a baby, it's a fetus. Well, that's a Latin word for baby, by the way. And
Tells you how smart they are.
yeah, it's pretty sick that the abortions still continue. It's horrifying. Horrifying. There were millions of abortions during that whole COVID scam. Tons of abortions. They scared the mothers. Go kill your baby because you don't want them to catch COVID. That kind of argument. And however, I have heard there were nurses and converted doctors and nurses who said whenever there is people praying the rosary, in particular, outside the abortion clinic, there's no abortions. They can't do it. Everything goes wrong. The doctor's late, or the machines break down, or the screen has problems. Something goes wrong. And it's very heroic of people to pray the rosary there and stand there. It's important to do it, though. It's unbelievable. We're murdering our babies. It's just so sick. And there's cases where people walk up and say, look, we have another option. We can adopt your baby. You don't need to kill it. And some of these young girls have retorted back and said, I don't want my baby anyway. But what'd she call it?
Baby.
She knew full well. They know it's murder. So, frightening. Think of it, gentlemen. You're all born after 1973. And if you're born after 1973 in the United States, you're lucky to be alive. Thank God you have good mothers who have the faith, because she could have been one of these modern liberal feminists and killed you or contracepted you. So thank God if you have good mothers. But you see how delicate this is. Just think if your mother was a liberal and had no problem with abortion and my rights and all that nonsense, you wouldn't even be here. And just think how many would be here, right here today, or we're going to see at the gas station today, or at the store today when we have to go shopping at BJ's. Just think how many more there should be there. Walking, shopping, driving, who are not there because they were killed off. And we're talking millions and millions of babies. It's horrifying when you get thinking of it. How many of you saw the film Unplanned? Unplanned.
I believe I saw it.
Okay, it's a pretty good film, and it's about Abby Johnson. About her conversion. And the movie is pretty well done. There's a few flaws in it. One of them is it shows a girl in a t-shirt and little shorts praying outside the abortion clinic. But actually it was a nun in full habit. In the real story, it's a nun that's praying. And she plants miraculous medals. And Abby Johnson, she admitted, I knew exactly where the medals were. Buried in the dirt. She just knew from the demonic powers. Because she was serving Satan, killing the babies. But she kept those medals on her desk. She'd wash them off and she kept the miraculous medals there, all these blessed medals. So it turns out, finally, one of the nurses can't help at the abortion taking place in the room. Abby Johnson was in the office. That's what she took care of. And she was all pro-abortion, women's rights and all that. So she's called into the office to help actually assist at an abortion, which she never did. And that's when it hit her, because she could see clearly on the screen, now the ultrasound, it's so developed now, you can see the baby. You can see even if they're smiling. Obviously, you can tell if it's a boy or girl. That's how detailed the ultrasound now is. So she's watching the ultrasound and helping the doctor, and then she sees the baby kicking and screaming and trying to defend itself against the intrusion of the suction thing, the instrument to suck the baby. And then she sees the arm pulled off and the baby kicking and squirming. She sees the leg sucked off and she's horrified. She couldn't believe it. And in the movie, it just shows her, she steps out and she's sick. She falls to the floor against the wall in tears. And that's the beginning of her conversion. But I ask, how can you be around abortions and not know what's going on? It's part of nature. How can you claim blissful ignorance with something so obvious? But maybe, with evolution, with the horrors of the lies of evolution, they really believe it's just a blob. But deep down, they have to know. Seriously, they have to know. Anyway, that begins her conversion, and she becomes Catholic, actually. And now she's an active pro-lifer. So that's a good thing. So pray for her. Pray for her to come to tradition. But she did over 20,000 abortions. Can you imagine that? So what also kind of made her, she had to schedule a whole bunch of abortions in one day because there was a hurricane hitting Texas. So they scheduled all these, fast forward abortions. So the mother, Abby Johnson, comes home and her daughter runs up and she sees, Mommy, why is there blood all over your sneakers? And because she was, going in and out. And that's another thing that made the mother realize she had to just quit that job. Anyway. And what about these doctors? I think some of them are possessed. They have to be.
My dad's doctor, he used to have committed suicide and he did abortions all the time.
Yeah.
Surprising.
I believe it. It's unspeakable. All right, next, Andres.
What is asserted in favor of the social and eugenic indication may and must be accepted, provided lawful and upright methods are employed within the proper limits. But to wish to put forward reasons based upon them for the killing of the innocent is unthinkable, and contrary to the divine precept, promulgated in the words of the apostle, evil is not to be done, that good may come from it.
Yes, go on.
Those who hold the reins of government should not forget that it is the duty of public authority to appropriate laws and sanctions to defend the lives of the innocent, and this all the more so since those whose lives are endangered and assailed cannot defend themselves, among whom we must mention in the first place infants hidden in the mother's womb. And if the public magistrates not only do not defend them, but by their laws and ordinance betray them to the death at the hands of the doctors or of others, let them remember that God is the judge and avenger of innocent blood which cried from earth to heaven.
That's right. These politicians who think they're all for glory and freedom and women's rights, like Biden, they're going to face the avenger on their death. And they're probably going to conjure up all these aborted babies. This was all done during your presidential term. Look at them all. Millions. All these babies in limbo. And that's another meditation on the Day of Judgment, is the millions, let's say billions rather, of babies who will be in our century, in our time, who will rise up at the Day of Judgment with their resurrected bodies. They're going to be age 30. And they're going to be all sentenced to limbo, and, and the parents of them will see them to their glory because of their repentance, or their shame because of lack of repentance. 68, Gabriel.
Finally, that pernicious practice must be condemned which closely touches upon the natural right of man to enter matrimony, but affects also in a real way the welfare of the offspring. For there are some who, over-solicitous for the cause of eugenics, not only give salutary consent for more certainly, salutary counsel for more certainly procuring the strength and health of the future child, which indeed is not contrary to right reason, but put eugenics before aims of a higher order, and by public authority wish to prevent from marrying all those whom, even though naturally fit for marriage, they consider, according to the norms and conjectures of their investigations, would, through the hereditary transmission, bring forth defective offspring. And more, they wish to legislate to deprive these of that natural faculty by medical action, despite their unwillingness. And this they do not propose as an infliction of a grave punishment under the authority of the state for a crime committed, not to prevent future crimes by guilty persons, but against every right and good they wish the civil authority to arrogate to itself a power over a faculty which it never had and can never legitimately possess.
Okay, so what he's saying was one of the consequences of evolution was the survival of the fittest. So you only want healthy, handsome, pretty couples getting married, but if they have any physical defects, if they're partly off mentally, but they still have the use of their mind, they should be sterilized. So it's the idea of the survival of the fittest. Germany was doing this, killing off and testing on the retarded, and in the United States too. They tortured and experimented with like with rabbits, the retarded babies, children, right? So that's forbidden, to sterilize someone because they're not perfectly fit, they're not perfectly handsome or perfectly beautiful. That's what they were doing. It was in the name of evolution, to stop the weak and ugly side of the human race and build the future strong race. You see, it's purely naturalistic. And that's kind of what's behind IVF, in vitro fertilization, which is condemned by the church. Even Pope Francis, the worst pope in Catholic history, condemned IVF, believe it or not. It's so evil. But if there's one survivor of IVF, there's about 30 or 40 abortions, because they take a whole bunch of fertilized eggs of humans that have a soul infused. And they're going to just pick one that's going to survive. So they can pick if it's a boy or girl and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah, couples just go in and like pick the one with the hair color they want, the eye color they want.
Yes, it's horrifying, which means death to the others. So with every one survival of IVF, there's 30, 40, 50 abortions, murders. And President Trump was in favor of this. President Trump was in favor of this. And I know a lot of Catholics got angry with me because I said you can't vote for him because he's pro-abortion. They got really angry. But that's the way it is. So I wonder how hard those people that voted for him, I wonder right now how hard they're working to write him and say, abolish IVF, abolish abortion.
Probably not.
Probably not, no, because they're only focused on economic, stuff. 60, where are we? 69?
Yes.
Who's up?
I am.
Guadalupe?
Those who act in this way are at fault in losing sight of the fact that the family is more sacred than the state, and that men are begotten not for the earth and for time, but for heaven and eternity. Although often these individuals are to be dissuaded from entering into matrimony, certainly it is not wrong to brand men.
Certainly it is wrong.
Certainly it is wrong to brand men with the stigma of crime because they contract marriage, on the ground that, despite the fact that they are in every respect capable of matrimony, they will give birth only to defective children, even though they use all care and diligence.
Yes, so some people, have only 2 fingers. They're born with 2 fingers. One kid, when we were growing up, he didn't have fingers. He had a fist, but he was a good wrestler. Bert was his name. He was quite a wrestler. So this thinking, eugenics, it's the Bill Gates thinking. Bert shouldn't marry because his children might not be born with full fingers. So sterilize him, even against his will, by order of the state, so as to avoid more defective children. You see how perverse that is? That's what the Pope is condemning. And it's very clear, right? Do you think these popes speak confusedly?
No.
No, it's very clear. This is how the Catholic popes used to always teach. Next, 70. Anthony, your last paragraph before you fly home.
Public magistrates have no direct power over the bodies of their subjects. Therefore, where no crime has taken place and there is no cause present for grave punishment, they can never directly harm or tamper with the integrity of the body, either for the reasons of eugenics or for any other reason.
Okay, what would be included here? The state cannot play with the bodies of children. What are we talking about now?
Transgender.
The transgender surgeries, which they're pushing on the children, and these pills that block the natural growth of a boy into a man or a girl into a woman, they're giving them these pills. It's absolutely criminal. They should all be executed. Go on.
St. Thomas teaches this when inquiring whether human judges, for the sake of preventing future evils, can inflict punishment. He admits that the power indeed exists as regards certain other forms of evil, but justly and properly denies it as regards the maiming of the body. No one who is guiltless may be punished by a human tribunal, either by flogging to death, or mutilation, or by beating.
Yes, that's 54. That's Summa Theologica, Secunda, question 108. So the state has no power to take an innocent person and mutilate them. And sterilization of men and women is a form of mutilation. And it's really perverse. 71, Michael?
Furthermore, Christian doctrine establishes, and the light of human reason makes it most clear, that private individuals have no other power over the members of their bodies than that which pertains to their natural ends. And they are not free to destroy or mutilate their members, or in any other way render themselves unfit for their natural functions, except when no other provision can be made for the good of the whole body.
So he's saying here, even if a man wants to sterilize himself, called vasectomy, he can't do it. That goes against the law of God and the natural law. He's not allowed to do that, which will prohibit him from having the natural function of having children. But the perversity of our modern age pushes this stuff. And the tying of the tubes of women, it's absolutely perverse. They're not allowed to do this. And some who do this when they're young and when they're older want to have children, it's too late. They can't reverse it. And the priest is told in confessional with a man who has done this to himself, he has to do everything he can within the reasonable possibilities of reversing it. He is obliged to reverse that. So this is beautiful Catholic teaching. It's nice to hear clear teaching, isn't it? And this is the authority of the Roman Pontiff dealing with the hot topics of the day. Wait till we come to Pius XII when he talks about holy virginity. And you have doctors who are promoting sins of self-abuse as relieving stress and psychological balance and promoting all this. Sins, impure sins, which the church has always condemned as mortal sins, and they're promoting it as stress relief. And Pius XII says, no, this is not justified. No psychology, no psychoanalysis, no psychiatrist can justify these mortal sins. Right? We'll come to that. But again, it's wonderful to see and hear clear teaching because all the media is full of all these lies and promotes these unnatural vices. 72. Andres.
We may now consider another class of errors concerning conjugal faith. Every sin committed as regards the offspring becomes in some way a sin against conjugal faith, since both these blessings are essentially connected. However, we must mention briefly the sources of error and vice corresponding to those virtues which are demanded by conjugal faith, namely the chaste honor existing between man and wife, the due subjection of wife to husband, and the true love which binds both parties together.
Okay, so he's hammering another error. Go on.
It follows, therefore, that they are destroying mutual fidelity, who think that the ideas and morality of our present time concerning a certain harmful and false friendship with a third party can be
Countenanced. That is, be considered. In other words, a third partner in the marriage. Such as the couple can't have children, so he brings in a third one to help, like a surrogate mother. That's also condemned. Go on.
And who teach that a greater freedom of feeling and action in such external relations should be allowed to man and wife, particularly as many, so they consider, are possessed of an inborn tendency which cannot be satisfied within the narrow limits of monogamous marriage. That rigid attitude which condemns all sensual affections and actions with a third party they imagine to be a narrowing of mind and heart, something obsolete, or an abject form of jealousy. And as a result, they look upon whatever penal laws are passed by the state for the preserving of conjugal faith as void, or to be abolished. Such unworthy and idle opinions are condemned by that noble instinct which is found in every chaste husband and wife, and even by the light of the testimony of nature alone, a testimony that is sanctioned and confirmed by the command of God, "Thou shalt not commit adultery," and the words of Christ, "Whosoever shall look on a woman to lust after her hath already committed adultery with her in his heart." The force of this divine precept can never be weakened by any merely human custom, bad example, or pretext of human progress. For just as it is the one and the same Jesus Christ, yesterday and today, and the same forever, so it is the one and the same doctrine of Christ that abides, and of which no one jot or tittle shall pass away till all is fulfilled.
So no sins against the marital bond. So no bringing in a third party is permitted, or fourth, or fifth. So all that stuff that's kind of happening now, this is 1930, he's condemning it. It was already happening then. Adjutorium nostrum in nomine Domini.
Benedictum et